Well, down on the day, as President Trump says, a ceasefire with Iran is still intact after the regime struck a civilian airport in Kuwait with missiles and drones. America has also brokered a full ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, speaking directly with Hezbollah for the first time. As for the conflict with Iran, the president says he sees light at the end of the tunnel.
The negotiation itself has gone very well, actually. Very well.
Mr. President.
It could happen. I mean, if it happens, and it might not happen, who knows? But if it happens, it could happen like over the weekend. I'd say in that part of the world, ceasefires when you're shooting in a more moderate manner.
Mr. President, yesterday you signed, Mr.
It's not
President.
bad. But it's true. I mean, it's, a ceasefire there is much different than a ceasefire in other parts of the world.
It's a Mike Murphy kind of day. The Dow's up almost 900 points. You know, we don't have resolution in Iran. Investors just don't care, Mike. What's going on?
Yeah, I think so. As far as Iran goes, we are at a resolution. We're very close to it. And I think investors are saying, like, however it resolves itself, either there's going to be more military action where the United States wins, or there'll be an agreement, a ceasefire, and an agreement where the United States wins. So that altercation, the war there is over. And look at all the neighboring countries over there. They're all, I think, talking about the Abraham Accords and how they're all now working together and working with us against one common enemy. Like this is over. When it ends exactly, or how the final nail is hammered into their coffin, I don't know, but it's over. That's why people are looking at the U.S. They're looking at what's going on here with innovation, with AI, with earnings, and that's why we're at all-time highs.
I'm going to go over to the bond side of the table for a second. I noticed the 10-year back below 4.5. I haven't even checked the 30 years, so I'm just going to bring that up and see. Are you kidding me? There's smoke coming out of it. I'm doing so much work on it. So we don't have resolution in Iran, and yet, Taylor, markets look good, bonds look good, or at least better.
Yields are down 2 to 3 basis points across the curve. There you go, Brian. You said something yesterday that
profound
resonated with me. And it goes along with what Mike Murphy is saying. Not that the longer this goes on, the better it is. I think the sooner we open the strait, the better. But this, DeRoy Murdoch mentioned this, you mentioned this, Larry Kudlow started to mention this, and the market, I think, to your point, Mike Murphy, is starting to think this through in the long term. An op-ed in the New York Times this morning said that the longer this goes on, the more the U.S. benefits in terms of no longer ever depending on the Strait of Hormuz again.
Right.
So China, before the Iran war, got 40% of their imports of oil from the Gulf. That number now is 20%. The winners of this adjustment are U.S. oil and nat gas producers that can fill the shortfall of the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe nuclear and renewable are in there as well. Exporters like Brazil, Guyana, we talked about yesterday, are in there as well. So it's hard, and the piece ends with this, to imagine a world where the strait remains closed forever. But it's also really hard to imagine a world where we continue to be reliant on the strait for 20% of our imports of oil and gas from that region. So I'm thinking the bright side of this is it's painful in the short term with oil at 92 or 93, and it's not at the 60s we want. But while this goes on, and the longer this goes on, I think similar to COVID in 2020 with rejiggering the supply chains, the more consumers, companies, countries are thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to go to the strait ever again. Or how do I go from 40% of the strait to 10%? And who is there to fill up that backlog? So I thought there was a very interesting piece about sort of the long-term things that we've tried to talk about, even though the short term has been painful for some.
It's not a tomorrow story.
Yeah.
But it is like the whole tilt of the globe changes, and nobody wants to rely on Iran anymore. And that's it. It's a long-term story for China, too, I would argue, Dagen. We haven't seen a ton of demand destruction around the globe, especially in developed countries, except China. Huge demand destruction for oil and gas in China. And that may be a strategy by them, or it may be the fact that their communist government is realizing we're in a pinch given what's happening in Iran?
Anything that, well, China, because will learn from this lesson as well, not to rely so heavily on a terrorist nation that much of the world hates for its energy resources. So it's Russia, Iran, and then Saudi Arabia. And China will figure out new partners. So, because China is always not ahead of us, but wily and figuring out how to preserve that regime. You said it might not be tomorrow in terms of these Middle Eastern nations figuring out a way around the Strait of Hormuz, but the Wall Street Journal goes through some of it's by rail, pipeline, and even sea routes that we've talked about that are expanding rapidly. That the expansion of the UAE pipeline, they already have the one through Fujairah, which was carrying an extra 1.5 million barrels a day. It's why the oil is below $100 a barrel, because of the East-West pipeline in Saudi Arabia, the UAE pipeline around through Fujairah, around the Strait of Hormuz, and rail and the strategic petroleum reserves. But that UAE expansion opens next year.
It's going way faster than anybody thought.
So they're quickly developing that. But in terms of the world at large, the Journal has a piece today about major oil companies, ExxonMobil and Chevron, have warned recently, and I mentioned a guy from Exxon earlier, that inventories of oil and refined product are getting to critical inventory lows just in the next few weeks. So therein lies the urgency of opening the Hormuz. Veteran oil analyst Paul Sankey sees red lights and bells ringing as early as this month. And this is even with our crude oil stockpiles falling, but gasoline is just 5% below the 5-year average. But when you have the major oil companies very concerned in their own way, they're expressing fear. We better get that oil flowing by sea out of the Persian Gulf.
I want to ask you a big existential question, Jackie.
Ready.
I have none of them today. I cannot come up with existential questions, but I have a theory, okay? Tell me if you think, and I hear what Dagen's saying, and I agree with that. But I have this sense, when the Strait opens, and Murphy says it's going to happen sometime, I don't know. They keep saying it's going to happen. I have no idea when that's going to happen. But my sense is the globe is going to be awash in oil to a degree we have not seen in a very long time. And the reason I say that is because everybody who can be ramped up is ramped up. And there is so much oil sitting on the water in that Gulf, and there are so many incentives to be going full throttle right now. And I just wonder if that won't surprise us big time.
It could.
When it opens up, we will say, oh my gosh, look at the price of oil.
We keep saying if the Strait opens up tomorrow, it'll still take some time for oil
That's
prices
what I hear
to come
a lot,
down.
yeah.
And I've said that before, but I really haven't actually thought of it that way once you unleash this. Right now, it's kind of like the problem that we were having here in the United States before Donald Trump, which was like, we started drilling in his first term and we had the oil, but we still didn't have the pipeline infrastructure to move it around. So consider the Strait of Hormuz kind of like, pipeline to a certain degree, and it's clogged and it's backed up right now. So you could see gas prices go down. Now, in the absence of your existential question,
you were preparing
I
for
actually
one.
brought
good.
something that I think is pretty existential maybe for you. This is like a memo to the people that the Supreme Leader Jr. posted on X. This is for the anniversary of the death of Ayatollah Khomeini. That was the one before the last one, who kind of got all this going. So he talks on and on about the people, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on to hit the subject of the United States. And he says, it's like Diary of a Madman right here, okay? Imperialism, led by the U.S., has built a military base called Israel over the past 80 years, and they don't accept the existence of a strong, independent Iran on the eastern border of the false, illegitimate geography of Greater Israel that is east of the Euphrates River. Imperialism is willing to do anything to prevent Iran's progress. The malicious enemy has been defeated, and in its confrontation with the armed forces, since it has received a decisive blow both in military combat and in public squares and streets, it's experiencing a profound, significant humiliation. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like delusional, crazy thinking in there. But this is why you can't trust these people. And
Right.
this is why this mission had to be taken on. Gas prices right now are $4.24. The national average under Joe Biden in June of 22 was $5.01.
Put it in perspective. You know, but when you read that paragraph to me, maybe except for like the last part of it, it sounded exactly like something I would hear on a campus in America. The crazy thing is, it sounded exactly like something I would hear in the most quote unquote educated parts of the United States. That's how much that junk has seeped into American life.
It's really scary. And like Jackie's saying, you can't rely on these people to honor any agreement. But what's the, President Trump doesn't want he doesn't have the support to go in there with our troops and just boots on the ground and have a regime-changing war. So next best thing is to make them irrelevant. Take away their importance in the oil markets of the world. Take away their nuclear weapons. And that's why I say we've won already, because when this is over, Iran's going to be a lot less important globally than they were when this started.
The big forces are in motion. It's a great point. Make a hard turn here, Taylor. We're going to talk about Petco.